Banu Abd al-Shams, and the Banu Abd al-Shams are a standard, traditional, fine clan of the Quraysh. His mother is Hala. Everybody should have now a light bulb go off. Who is Hala? There's only one Hala in the whole seerah that we're interested in. His mother is Hala, and Hala is the older sister of Khadija. Okay, Hala is the one who first hired the Prophet, then Khadija. Hala is that Hala, right? And so Abu al-As is the son of Hala, which means he's the cousin of Zainab. Okay, and the Khadija, in the days of Jahiliyyah, before Islam, Khadija had asked the Prophet ﷺ to marry Zainab to Abu al-As, her sister's son. Her sister's son, right? And the riwayah says the Prophet ﷺ would never refuse anything for Khadija, subhanAllah. Whatever Khadija wanted, she got. He never said no to her, subhanAllah. And we have already talked about the love of Khadija and what nobility and how much love he had. So the Prophet would never say no to Khadija. Whatever she wanted, she would be given. And so when she requested this, khalas, it was decreed that Zainab would marry Abu al-As. Now, by the way, how many daughters the Prophet had? We all know. 4. What is the order of those daughters? Fatima. Fatima is the youngest. Zainab. Kulthum is next. Ruqayya is next. Ruqayya is number 2. Kulthum is number 3. Fatima is number 4. Everybody memorize this. This is your Prophet's daughter, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are the daughters. These are the true Ahl al-Bayt, the real Ahl al-Bayt of the Prophet ﷺ. Number 1, Zainab. Number 1, Zainab. Number 2, Ruqayya. Number 3, Kulthum. And number 4, Fatima. And most likely Fatima was born in Islam. Most likely Fatima was born after the Wahy began, and the other 3 were born before Islam. Now, so Zainab's marriage has been decided. We already said many months ago, probably years ago, Ruqayya and Kulthum, they had already been engaged but not married. Who had they been engaged to? The sons of Abu Lahab, right? The sons of Abu Lahab they had been engaged to. When the da'wah began, when the process began preaching, Abu Lahab cancelled. Abu Lahab said, no way I'm going to allow my sons to marry your daughters. And he cancelled. And the Quraysh put pressure on Abu al-As that ask whatever you want and name any woman you want and we will marry you to her, but get rid of Zainab. Divorce Zainab and we'll give you anything you want. And Abu al-As refused, and he said nobody can substitute or take the place of Zainab. Abu al-As loved Zainab immensely, and so he was not bribed. And they remained married. And when the Prophet emigrated to Medina, Zainab remained with her husband. Zainab's married now, she's an adult. The other daughters come, but Zainab has her own family. And by the way, they had a daughter, her name was Umama, the sister says. Umama, yes. Right? This daughter was the one whom the Prophet prayed while carrying in Salah, Sahih Bukhari. Right? He's carrying this baby and he's doing sajda and ruku' with this baby. That's Umama. Right? That's Umama binti Zainab. Umama binti Abu Rabi'. Right? So, Abu al-As ibn Rabi'. So this is Umama. They had a daughter. By the way, they also had a son, but he died as an infant. And Umama lived a long life. And Umama, I'm going into one of these tangents again, but who did she marry? She married Ali ibn Abi Talib after her khala died. Her khala is who? Fatima, exactly. After Fatima dies, so now she's a young lady. Now Ali proposes for her, and Umama then marries Ali, and they have some children as well. In any case, back to the story. Where are we now? So Zainab. So this is Abu al-As. He's the one who has married Zainab, and he remains in Mecca. In the Battle of Badr, he joins the Meccan side, not out of hatred of Islam, but he's forced to do so. He doesn't really fight a passionate battle. He's taken as a prisoner of war, as we know. And his family, his wife, sends in ransom for her husband. And what does she send? The necklace that Khadija had and had gifted her. And this brought back so many memories to the Prophet ﷺ, and he requested, because again it's not in the hand of the Prophet ﷺ, the guy who captured him, he wants the money, right? The Muslim who captures him wants the money, and so the Prophet ﷺ requested him that if you think it is appropriate, then let him go fi sabilillah. And because he couldn't pressure him, and it is not his nature. So obviously when any Muslim is asked in this manner by the Prophet ﷺ, khalas, he is yours, Ya Rasulullah. We didn't know this at the time, but the Prophet ﷺ had made him promise what? Send me Zainab. You're forgetting. Send me Zainab. And remember the story of Zainab trying to leave the city and then her pushing her back and whatnot. All of this is that story, right? And that is why the Prophet ﷺ did have a lot of respect and even love for Abu al-As, because he said in a hadith in Bukhari, when he was talking about some of his other son-in-laws, he said, as for Abu al-As, he spoke to me and he told the truth. And he promised me and he fulfilled his promise. And then he criticized some other people, other son-in-laws of his, but Abu al-As, he said no, he was firm in his, so he did not do this to me. So, Abu al-As returns after the Battle of Badr. He sends Zainab to Medina. Okay? So now Zainab is in Medina. Abu al-As is in Mecca. At least 2-3 years have gone by. And lo and behold, he is now captured and he's now a POW in Medina. Okay? This is where we are now. Okay? Now, the next morning in Salat al-Fajr, the Prophet ﷺ stands up, says, Allahu Akbar. And from the women's side, a loud voice comes. O Muslims, I am Zainab binti Muhammad, and I have given Abu al-As ibn al-Rabi' my protection. So, O Muslims, you give him your protection as well. In Salat al-Fajr, the whole gathering is there. Those days people would show up for Fajr. Sorry about that, but I had to say that. Those days people would show up for Fajr. And so the whole masjid is in shock. In Fajr she's making announcement because she wants everybody to hear. And the Prophet, when Salah is finished, he said, did you hear what I heard? I'm not imagining. Did you hear what I heard? They said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. He said, Wallahi, I had no knowledge of this as much as you. Meaning, I have no clue she was going to do this. Right? This is just as much of a surprise to me as it is to you. And then he said the famous statement, which is all the madahib agree. He said that all of the Muslims are the same when it comes to aman, when it comes to protection. The least of them can offer protection to anyone. And so, O Zainab, we have given protection to those whom you have given protection for. Now, what is this protection or aman? So any Muslim, and this is in fiqh and all of the madahib, any Muslim, even a child, even any Muslim, yani man, woman, some say even a Muslim slave, anybody has the right to simply, if there's a particular non-Muslim in the state of war that has done him a favor or whatnot, say, look, this person, he's under my protection. Don't harm him now. I will deal with this person. And this is mutawatir, this is well known, it's a standard principle of Islamic fiqh, right? And so the Prophet used this principle and he said, look, Zainab, if you have said this, then all Muslims are the same in this regard, and we will give aman to those whom you have given aman. Meaning we're not going to harm him then. Khalas, you have given him aman, then he is a person who will be protected. And the people who had captured him and his property, once again the same thing. Twice he has negotiated for Abu al-As ibn al-Rabi'. Twice, subhanallah. Right? But remember, Abu al-As is not a Muslim. That's the whole point. If he only do accept Islam, all of this would go away. Right? He's not a Muslim. And he's not accepting Islam. So, twice, this is the second time he negotiates, and he says basically the same thing to another group of Sahaba. He says that you see what has happened, and you know the status of Abu al-As in my family, that he is Zainab's husband. So if you wish, you can return his money and his section of the caravan to him, and that is more beloved to us. And if you decide to keep it, then that is your right and the right that Allah has given you. SubhanAllah, means very clear. I can't force you to give this back. This is your right. But if you give it, basically Allah will reward you. It's up to you what you want. Now obviously, who could possibly say no, right? And so the Ansar who had basically taken this portion of the caravan, and they have, now by the way, this portion of the caravan, this is Abu al-As's basically not personal property, but this is the investments that people have given him. right? So he has people's, merchandise and people's money. They've gone to Syria, they're coming back. So this is a lot of wealth. It's not just his wealth. So the Ansar go and they say to him that, "O Abu al-As, you are the Sihr, the son-in-law of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Isn't it time you accept Islam? If you do so, we'll give you your money back and you can stay in Medina." In other words, they tried to bribe him with Islam through the money. Like, come on, at least be a Muslim before we give you your money back. The Prophet hadn't told them to put this condition, but they feel like a little bit more zealous. Like, come on, we're not going to give a Muslim our money back to a non-Muslim. Let's give it back to a Muslim. At least we can say, okay, he accepted Islam, and let him remain here with us. And so Abu al-As responded that, "What an evil suggestion that I should change my faith and be treacherous because of that." In other words, you want me to be greedy for the money and ignore the amana that has been given to me just to accept Islam? This is not a good, suggestion. And this was not from the Prophet. This was from those Ansar who thought that it would at least be better if he embraced the faith. So he refused to embrace. So in any case, the Ansar gave him all of the money back. In any case, because that's what the Prophet had told them. So Abu al-As took all of this money and he returned back to Mecca, and he returned every single amana back to its rightful owner, and he asked the people of Mecca, "Has anybody given me anything that remains?" And so they all said, "No, Jazakallah, you have done your job, excellent." And in the whole caravan, it was only Abu al-As who managed to return the money to its owners, right? As soon as all of that had taken place, then in front of the Quraysh he said, "Now, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah." That he didn't want to accept Islam in Medina. Why? Because somebody is going to say, "You did it for the money, you did it for the life, you did it for this and that. Now that I've gotten rid of all of my obligations and nobody can accuse me, I'm a free man back in my hometown, let me embrace Islam publicly." And Abu al-As, his great-grandfather is Abd al-Shams. He is lineage of Quraysh. You cannot harm a hair on his head. Abu al-As is from the stock of the Quraysh. This is hardcore Qurayshi, right? You cannot touch Abu al-As. And so Abu al-As has the audacity and the courage and the guts to announce his shahada in front of the Kaaba, and he then returns back to Medina as a Muslim. And so they are then reunited. Now, this story could be problematic for two reasons, both of which are related, so pay attention to this. The first issue is that when he is captured as a POW, as a prisoner, clearly he's not a Muslim at the time. And the Prophet ﷺ frees him or lets him go basically on the presumption that the two of them are still married. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, when he did free, he said to Zainab, "This man is a mushrik, so he is not allowed for you. فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَحِلُّ لَكِ." So they didn't live together at that time. That's only when he came back as a Muslim. But still, is there a marriage at this time or not? And even more problematic, which is where all of the fiqh comes in, the real fiqh problem is, when he did return back to Medina, the hadith in Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi and Nisa'i, the authentic hadith says that the Prophet ﷺ returned him to her without a mahr. Means without a nikah. There was no new nikah done. The Prophet ﷺ returned him to her without a new nikah. Why is this problematic? It is problematic because we all know in fiqh that when the wife converts to Islam and the husband does not, what happens to the marriage contract? It is annulled. And if the husband accepts Islam within the iddah of the wife, whether it is 1 month or 3 months, there's an ikhtilaf, but the correct opinion is 1 month. It is one menstrual cycle, by the way. There's a point of fiqh. If there's a non-Muslim couple. Now obviously, if the husband embraces Islam, that is less problematic. Why? Because a Christian or a Jewish wife can remain. Now obviously, a pagan wife could not remain. But a Christian or Jewish wife can remain. So that's not a problem. But the other way around is problematic. You have a non-Muslim couple, the wife embraces Islam and the husband does not embrace. Technically, in a Sharia caliphate system, what would we do? And even in private, even in America, we will advise a woman this, but it's up to her what she wants to do. We can't do anything, it's up to her. But we will advise a woman if she converts in this land and her husband does not convert, that look, he is not allowed for you. He is not your husband, Shari'i wise. He's not your husband anymore. Right? So according to the madhahib, Basically, in this iddah, if he converts, no problem. So she has 1 month iddah. If he converts in 2 weeks, no problem. Khalas, the two of them are married. If he doesn't convert after 1 month, what happens to the marriage? Null and void. Right? And if he wants her back after conversion, majority of scholars say, what? New marriage, new nikah, new mahr. And that's the majority position, by the way. Right? This hadith is problematic because it explicitly says, without a new mahr, without a new nikah contract. Now, to make a long story short, so the majority have interpreted this hadith here and there, and they still hold their position that if a woman converts after 1 month, her marriage is broken. If her husband wants to return to her, her ex-husband we should say, then a new nikah and a new mahr is needed after he accepts Islam. However, there is a minority dissenting opinion, and it was championed by many people, and Ibn Taymiyyah is one of them. And that is, and this is an interesting case, this is a trivia question. It's a very unique scenario. He said, and wallahi the evidences seem to suggest that, so this is my position as well, that such a woman is in a unique scenario and situation. If she wants, she can marry anybody she wants with a new nikah and a new mahr. Any Muslim she wants. Right? After the iddah is over, now she can marry any Muslim who proposes he wants to marry. She wants to marry, she marries him. And if her husband embraces Islam, and she has not married in the meantime, then she may resume marital life with him without a new nikah or mahr. So she's in an interesting scenario in that her ex-husband becomes halal without a marriage contract, without a mahr, without a nikah, if they both agree for this. And so they say this is the trick question: what woman is there who can marry without a nikah, without a mahr or whatnot? She can get married in a situation that's very unique, basically, right? Now, obviously, there are many conditions here. Of them, she didn't marry somebody else, obviously, right? If she marries somebody else, then khalas, that is permanently broken, right? Of them is that the husband eventually converts, right? Because in this case, at least 3-4 years have gone by. And Abu al-As has not converted. And Zainab has not remarried. When he does convert, the Prophet simply allows them to resume married life. And this shows us that, inshallah, this is the correct position, and it's really common sense. It doesn't, it's a very, you understand the fiqh behind it. It's very simple, that this is called the ankihat al-kuffar, the marriage contract of the non-Muslims, what is to be done. And by the way, another point here, just while we're mentioning this, a fiqh point, and we just have one story left anyway, so inshallah we have some time. The fiqh point here, if a couple, non-Muslim couple, converts simultaneously, by unanimous consensus of all of the scholars of Islam, they do not need to redo their nikah in an Islamic manner. And this is something that only some overzealous, ignorant Muslims require. If two non-Muslims convert, and they were married, this is the key. Obviously, if it's boyfriend, girlfriend, we're not going to accept this. They were married in however their culture or society deemed them to be married. However, whether they were pagans, whether they were Buddhists, whether they were Christian, whatever they were, if they both convert, then their marriage contract will be automatically transferred as an Islamic one, even if the conditions of nikah were not met when it was done. There was no wali, or there was no it's all irrelevant. And how do we know this? As Ibn Hajar and the Shawkani and others say, in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, thousands of couples converted. And never once did any Muslim say, how did you guys get married? And what happened in your marriage? And let me do the checklist here. It was accepted. Right? So marriages of the non-Muslims, when they convert, those marriages are valid however they occurred. And this we learned from the Seerah and from this incident as well. The final mini story, and this is just an interesting story for the fiqh of food actually. That's really what it's famous for. And then inshallah next week we will do the battle of Khaybar, inshallah ta'ala. Or sorry, the treaty of Hudaybiyyah before the battle of Khaybar. The final story, the Sariyatul Khabat. The Sariyatul Khabat. And Khabat is the withered leaves that are on the thorn shrubs, the withered leaves, is called khabat. And it is called Saniyatul Khabat because the Sahaba were forced to eat khabat. So what is this story? Sometime before the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, we don't know exactly when, the Prophet ﷺ sent another large caravan to intercept the Quraysh. We don't have any other details. Were they coming up or going down? Most likely this would have been the one that when they're going up to Syria, and then the Sariyah of Zayd was when they were coming back down. Allah knows best. So he sent a large expedition of 300 men to attempt to intervene, to intercede, to block the caravan of the Quraysh. However, they were not successful. And the Quraysh managed to elude them, and because of this, the Muslims, when they tried to chase and whatnot, eventually they ran out of supplies. The supplies dwindled, and eventually the supplies ran very, very low. Their leader was Abu Ubaidah Amir ibn al-Jarrah, and so when the supplies became critical, Abu Ubaidah commanded everybody to give any food that they have. And so all of the food of the army was collected, and then he began rationing. Everybody gets the exact same amount. And the ration continued to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle until finally they had 1 date per person per day. And then even that ran out. And Jabir ibn Abdullah narrates, and the hadith is in many books including Bukhari, that they would have to put the date seeds, they kept the date seeds. They would put the date seeds in their mouth and suck on it throughout the day. And they would drink water with the date seed there so that they get some type of psychological taste there. And they were forced to eat khabat. And khabat is basically the thorn bush. It has those dried, withered leaves. They would have to pluck those and eat those khabat just to, basically survive. And eventually they made their way to the shore. There is a city close to Medina. In our times, it'll take you like 2 hours to drive, not that far, called Yambur. And it is a petroleum city there. It's close to Medina, it's on the shore. So they made their way close to Yambur. And lo and behold, they found that massive whale. Most likely reading it, this is a blue whale. This is one of the biggest creatures on earth. Because the way that the hadith describe it, it is simply unbelievable. Right? And Allah gifted them this basically. They found this massive whale, they said, the likes of which we had never seen before. And there are so many stories, they say, I forgot now the riwayah of Bukhari, was it 13 or 14 Sahaba sat in the eye socket of the whale? Just the eye. You have 13 men sitting in that bone of the eye. Right? And they took one of the bones of the whale and they planted it on the beach. And Abu Ubaidah chose the largest camel. And he sat on that camel and he managed to walk right underneath the bone without having to lower his head. This is like 20 feet we're talking about, or not 20, maybe 15 feet, because a camel as it is. And on top of that, Abu Ubaidah is sitting and he doesn't have to lower his head. This is the bone sticking out from the ground. Clearly, this is one of those massive whales that, and they called it ambar. We don't know what type it is in our time. And they rejoiced so much that they camped 1 month because of the whale. Cut them some slack, we would have probably stayed 2 months. Okay? They were so happy, they're about to die of starvation, that they camped 1 month and they actually gained fat. And they continued to eat of this whale. 300 people eating 1 month of this whale, until finally they decided to go back and they pack their bags with the meat and they go back to Medina, and they tell the Prophet ﷺ what happened, and they asked him what we did, was it permissible or not? And subhanAllah, they're worried. We ate a dead animal, right? Even though in the Sharia it's allowed to eat dead animals in the case of darura, but they're worried and they're confirming, is it halal for us to eat this animal? And so the Prophet ﷺ said, do you have any meat of it left? They said yes. He said, bring it to me. And so, according to my humble knowledge, and I could be mistaken, but as far as I know, the one and only time the Prophet ﷺ ate seafood was this time. The one and only time he tasted seafood. Now, why did he eat in front the meat? To demonstrate for them that it is completely halal to eat seafood. Completely halal to eat seafood. And by the way, this also shows us that seafood does not require slaughter. In fact, it doesn't even require to be caught, because they did not catch the whale. The whale was dead already. And this clearly shows us that a sea creature, any creature from the sea, and this is the vast majority opinion, only the Hanafi madhab has a disagreement here, with all respect to them. The other three madhahib say everything from the sea, shrimps and crustaceans and crabs and squid and eel and whatnot. Everything you can think of that comes from the sea is halal, because whale is not a fish, it is a mammal. A whale is technically not a fish, as we know. It is a mammal. And our Prophet ﷺ ate of that whale. And our Prophet ﷺ said, أُحِلَّتْ لَنَا مَيْتَتَانِ وَدَمَانِ فَأَمَّا الْمَيْتَتَانِ فَالْجَرَادُ وَالْحُوتُ وَأَمَّا الدَّمَانِ فَالْكِبِدُ وَالطُّحَالِ. That the Prophet ﷺ said, 2 dead animals are allowed for us. We don't have to slaughter them. Number 1, jarad, locusts. And number 2, al-hut, the whale. And by mentioning the whale, he intentionally wanted to give the biggest creature from the sea to tell us, if the biggest creature is halal, how about the smaller creatures? If this massive whale is halal, how about the smaller creature? And Allah says in the Quran, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 96, أُحِلَّتْ لَكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَحْرِ وَطَعَامُهُ مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِلسَّيَّارَةِ. That the catch of the ocean is halal for you. أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَحْرِ وَطَعَامُهُ, and the food of the ocean. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq said, صَيْدُ الْبَحْرِ is what you catch. طَعَامُ الْبَحْرِ, what is dead and it throws at you. Both what you catch and what is dead. Right? If you catch it, then you kill it. Even if you didn't kill it, it is halal. And therefore, and this is, in my humble opinion, very clear, that all types of seafood, all animals that live in the ocean are halal for us, regardless of how they got on the table, regardless of who captured them, how they were captured, whether they were dead, whatnot. They are all halal. And this is the main point of this tradition, of this incident. And then we just conclude by pointing out that it was also during this time, the 5th year and the 6th year of the Hijrah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the legislation of hijab. Hijab came down around this time. And also the Prophet ﷺ married Zainab bint Jahsh at this time. And the story of the marriage of Zainab is, in my humble opinion, frankly, the most controversial story out of the Seerah. This is the most controversial. Number 2 is something else. I mean, whatever it might be. But number 1 is Zainab. And I am debating whether to have an entire halaqah now or to delay, because as you know, when we finish the Seerah, I've already said this, we're going to have a whole series about the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. It might be better to delay this story there, but we will see inshaAllah. But around this time, in the 5th year of the Hijrah, the Prophet married Zainab binti Jahsh. And then we just conclude by saying, according to some authorities, our Prophet ﷺ sent 14 sariyas and participated in 2 ghazwas between Khandaq and Hudaybiyyah, which is what we just covered. We only covered 4 or 5 of them. The rest of them are mentioned in Ibn Ishaq. They're all there, but frankly, even though this is, alhamdulillah, an advanced class, there's got to be some levels and details we leave out. These are simply names and who fought against whom and how many people died. And frankly, most of us would not know these tribes and they would not be relevant to us. So whoever wants to look them up, they can look them up in